everyone, welcome back to the Quest for the Bestest. It's the podcast where us four backlog boys look at every single Best Picture winner and try to figure out which one we think is the very best. That's right, it's the Quest for the Bestest. I'm Timo, and of course I'm joined by Abram, Tanner, and Tucker. And today we are talking about the 1973 Best Picture winner. It's The Sting, directed by George Roy Hill and starring Paul Newman, Robert Redford, and Robert Shaw, among others. And I can't wait to talk about it. This is a fun film. There's a lot in it. And we are going to dive in and discuss this crime caper. But first, we got to do a little housekeeping because we talked about a film last week, of course. And the film that we talked about was Alfred Hitchcock's one and only Best Picture winner. Is the only one out of all the movies that he made to be given an award by the Academy. It was Rebecca from 1940. We gave it a 7.8 average score, which after a little bit of debate, we decided places it at the 40th spot on our list. So that goes in between Grand Hotel and All Quiet on the Western Front. And if you want to check out what else we had to say about the film, because I believe we had some stuff to say about it, go watch last week's episode. It's all there for you. And speaking of last week's episode, Tucker, I do believe some people left little messages down below the video to try to reach to us. What did they have to say?
Yeah, we actually got quite a bit of comments here. We got some from our classic guys. We got a John Tour. We got a Dan's. But, you know, they're old news at this point. And unfortunately,
they're old hat, of course.
We have got to give the spotlight to someone brand new. New commenter, Chileborn90, says, "The Hays Code strikes again in watering down a great work of literature. This movie hurts because, in my opinion, it was so close to being great. On the one hand, I'm very grateful that Hitchcock directed this movie because I think he pushed the subversive elements in the novel as far as he could for the time. However, from what I understand, Selznick tried to control the production and wouldn't let Hitchcock really be Hitchcock. The book is fantastic. I will also say that when I saw the Netflix movie, it made me appreciate this version so much more." Now, I don't think any of us have seen the Netflix version, but, I imagine that we would follow a similar path to that. But we also got another new commenter. Down Up Destiny left a comment saying, "The King's speech is awesome." What? Which is not relevant. Because he didn't comment on the King's Speech episode, but he should. He should go back, and as should you, dear viewer. Go back and watch the King's Speech episode and all the other Quest episodes. Leave comments on all of them. It's going to be great. I can't wait for you to do it.
We love our new commenters. So I know you're out there. I know you're watching, viewer. You've never commented on a Quest video, so drop a comment. Pop your Quest comment cherry in
Absolutely.
many ways.
In many ways.
In many ways.
All right, well, let's talk about The Sting. What did you guys think of it?
Well,
go ahead, Abram.
I was really disappointed by this movie, I think.
What?
No, I'm kidding. It's just that we were 10 minutes into this video already. We realized we never recorded, so I figured I'd try something different on the second take.
You spice it up a little bit.
Yeah, but just to see if it felt right, and it didn't. Because as before, same as now, I can't deny it. I loved The Sting. It's a sort of movie that I feel like I should have seen already with my dad. It's a crime movie. It's got a great tone to it, a great spirit. It certainly lacks maybe some of the thematic depth that we get out of the other Best Picture winners, but nonetheless, I think that the quality of this plot, the intricacy of its construction, and the charisma of the leads here is just so damn good that I kind of completely forget about maybe those more traditional Quest touchstones that we hit on that we probably can't really talk about here. And because I'm a biased idiot, that's not going to affect my score. This is going to get pretty top marks for me because I love this movie.
Yeah. Abram, I'll piggyback off of you there. I totally agree. You talk about the plot intricacy and the charismatic leads here. I think this really strikes me as like a proto like Ocean's 11, a proto The Departed in some ways, with the conning and the charismatic leads and in sort of embedding yourself in criminal syndicates and things like that. And I really love The Sting as well. I think it hits all those marks that you talked about. And it's just a really fun, good time of a movie. It balances out. It's largely a comedy, but it throws in some dramatic elements there as well towards the beginning that I think are very well executed. Great stuff across the board from me.
Well, I'm not sure I really felt that this film was such a comedy, but nonetheless, I found it fairly entertaining. I was having a good time while I was watching it. After I got into it, the film, it's a 1930s crime, like a gangster story, but it's told from this very 70s perspective. And it took me a little while to get into, they speak in their lingo. See, we're gonna blow a cap in this guy, and like, we gotta go do the horse races and stuff like that. And once I was absorbed into the world of the story, then I was able to like let loose and just be like, okay, we've got like a really interesting story happening here. There's a lot of twists and a lot of turns, and it's like it was engaging, and I was trying to figure out what was going on the whole time. And so I found myself entertained. I do agree with Abram. I mean, I do think that a lot of like these top marks quest movies, best pictures that we've talked about have all these other like very deep and I don't know, heartfelt thematic elements that is a little lacking. And I do think the pacing suffers a little bit in the film. There are moments where it drags, but other than that, those are not like the biggest things ever for me. I found myself to be having a good time while I was watching it. And that's quite all right when movies do that.
Yeah, I enjoy enjoyable movies, and this certainly is one. I'm not one who's personally a fan of crime stories in general. I don't find the stylings, the tones of characters to be particularly compelling, but I think when you place such an incredible jazzy score, a ragtime score on top of it, and you get charismatic leads, that can lead me through anything. And I had a very fun time with this thing. I think maybe a lot of my criticisms or thoughts on this as we talk about it in the Best Picture race are going to come down on it a little bit, not because it's not a bad film in any particular way, but because it doesn't really feel important. It doesn't really feel subversive. It didn't really take any steps forward cinematically, thematically. It's a very good movie, but I feel like it sticks out. I mean, sandwiched between two Godfather movies, this definitely feels like a dip in, holy shit, the best pictures of the 70s. Yeah, this thing is among them, and sure, that's a fun time to talk about it, but I don't know if it's particularly memorable to me. I think maybe I play myself a little bit of that score. I look at Robert Redford, very young Robert Redford, in his outfits, and I'm like, hey, it's this thing. But I really don't know if it's going to stick with me. Maybe just because of my personal disconnect from the stylings of crime movies. But for a 70s con movie, this is a heck of a good time.
Yeah, I agree. Let's start off talking about some plot, okay? Because as we alluded to, this is quite a bit of an intricate plot. I relate it to Ocean's 11 or The Departed, which are very dense and twisty and turny, and maybe they're not revealing things until the very end. And this thing very much precedes those movies. I nearly said it follows in their footsteps, but it does not. It sets those footsteps in many ways. And I really dig the plot of this. I mean, I think you start out you start out small with your character Johnny Hooker, portrayed by Robert Redford. He's a small time con man. He's not mugging people, but he's essentially tricking people into getting mugged. With his friend Luther, portrayed by James Earl Jones's father, which came as a surprise to Tucker and I. And he, through a set of circumstances, he accidentally steals some money from this big time crime boss named Lonigan, and Luther gets killed because Lonigan is this like ruthless guy who kills for pride. As we find out, I think he's a really interesting villain, as I want to talk about, and he ends up meeting up with Paul Newman. These two titans of acting in the 1970s, Robert Redford and Paul Newman, coming together in this movie. And Newman's like the washed up con man who's on the run from the FBI and stuff like that. I think it's a really engaging plot, and it only gets more interesting from there.
Yeah, the way that the whole film takes and it like builds upon like layer upon layer of deceit, and you don't know who's working on what side, because Robert Redford seems to go and infiltrate Lonigan's whole operation and kind of befriends him a little bit. I don't know. James Bond does gambling, I think, a little better. Like Casino Royale, like has like some amazing gambling moments, but in this they're all cheating, and that's really fun. And so there's a lot of like there's a poker game on the train towards the beginning of the movie that I found really enjoyable, that has a couple of twists where they're like, oh, how did he get those cards? And it's like, I think just seeing all of these elements of crime in a way that's like, it's like crime kind of without the killing. You know, there's like one death, but other than that, like there isn't that much violence in the film. It's a lot of just like trickery and going behind each other's backs and leaving out information. And like setups that we as the audience don't really see, but are kind of like inferred or implied later, that are, I think, is very enjoyable to watch and like tricky to figure out. You gotta work at it. You gotta put your little brain to action to see what is really happening in the film.
I hate doing that.
Thinking during movies.
I absolutely agree. I think that maybe what makes this film stick out for me and does make it more enjoyable for me than most crime-based films is that it's kind of a lighter tone for a crime film. Like, this is a con film. Ostensibly, every character in it is a criminal of some sort. They're engaging in criminal activities, but you never feel like this is the seedy underbelly of New York. You know, they're running subversive things, but they're all upbeat about things. They're excited. They're working together. A lot of scenes take place during the daytime in the open. They're wearing snazzy costumes. This isn't the gritty crime movie that I feel like we get quite a bit of. You know, sandwiched between the lavish crime movies of the Godfather 1 and 2, I think this has a little more pop and fun to it. And when Tanner says that it's a comedy at the beginning, yeah, I can see why he thinks that. I mean, matched along with the Scott Joplin score, that it does feel like it's got a ragtime, almost slapstick comedy energy to it, because in your mind you're hearing this music and you're like, this is comedy music. They're gonna do a punchline, and it doesn't really lean into like comedy punchline moments, but these characters are witty. They are having a fun with the circumstance, and that definitely brings in some energy.
Yeah,
I suppose so. And I guess this was interesting in the movie because you're right, but I also think you're kind of wrong because...
What?
I mean, it's a revenge movie, and I think what's interesting about it is, and where I think we'd find common ground, is a sort of element of subversion with how things unfold, because, like, my partner's been killed, gotta get back at the guy, he's a banker. Well, you would think, okay, we're in for a bank heist movie where we gotta break into the vault, we gotta get the money and get out of there, right? But that's not how the movie unfolds. And Tucker, you're right, it is more upbeat, but we're still, like, these guys are just a bunch of shithead losers. I mean, we are introduced to them on this little con that they do, and then we go immediately backstage to, like, blow all the money on this girl who's, like, mostly naked out dancing on stage. And then we're going back into this seedy bar, and we're, like, planning this heist, and there's, like, the head of police, like, with a prostitute in the room next door. Like, it is still seedy, and there's this sort of contrast between how these guys present themselves and kind of who they are. I mean, we meet Paul Newman so drunk out of his mind that he's, like, on the floor with his face pressed against the wall and he can't move. And so I think it's fun. I think it is a very serious film, but it presents itself, I think you're right, Tucker, in a way that kind of runs parallel to the brooding, we gotta get revenge for our friend, and I like that. I think that's very interesting.
Yeah, I think that maybe why I say that is because we're spending the most of the time of the movie with the guys who know that each other are criminals, and they are all in on it. Like, a lot of people in this movie, because we're spending so much time with them, they're not hiding the fact that they've got these criminal abilities. They're not sneaking around in the shadows for the most of it. They're like, hey, I am the one who's great at, not safe cracking, but just as an example, I'm the one who's great at safe cracking. Isn't that awesome? Like, I'm really excited to show you guys this. I'm the one who does the cards. And they're pumped up to get revenge on this guy. And yeah, it's because a guy was killed. It's because this guy Lonigan is an absolute shithead, and he's been getting people killed over the years. But I never really felt the weight of these circumstances. Maybe in a few sequences when you're feeling the impact of Luther's death, but after that, they're setting up these ridiculously elaborate scenarios where building an entire horse racing underbelly bar, it kind of feels like a punchline. It's like, I can't believe that they're doing this. This is ridiculous. They're all dressing up. They're putting on fake mustaches. Yeah, it feels like a parody of that kind of situation.
Yeah. There's the guy who his skill is doing a British accent and stuff like that. I think like a pretty overtly comedic sequence is when they like trick that one guy into like giving them their office so they can hold a fake meeting in there.
Exactly. That is hilarious.
He's like, hey, we're gonna be Peyton in here. He's like, you don't want to be in here unless you want to do your work under a tarp, and then. And then a little bit later, he talks over the intercom while the guy whose office they're using is there, and he looks at the reception. He's like, what is going on?
Yeah.
And he goes back in, and everyone's gone, and the walls half painted. That's a pretty overtly comedic sequence, I think, and a very, very fun one at that.
Yeah, you talking about that sequence makes me think more about this film in its like place in film history, right? Because it's portraying an era, 1936. This is a favorite of Hollywood. Hollywood loves to tell these stories, and they really love to tell them back in the day, back during that time in the 30s, and then in the 40s too. You know, films like Scarface and these old classic gangster movies. But remember the Hays Code. As our featured commenter this week brought up, we've got the production code, which means they can't do things. They can't show stuff. But by 1973, that production code doesn't matter. They can do whatever they want. And so
We
this...
threw Hayes out the window.
Yeah.
Whoosh.
See you later, Hayes. They so they can have like the prostitution, and they can have like showing a lot of how
Blood,
these the blood, well, the whole blood gag, showing how these crimes are committed and showing all the setups, which a lot of that, like the core content of this film, is like not allowed during Code Hollywood.
Criminals getting away with their criminality.
Exactly. Yeah.
And
yeah.
so I
That's the
think
whole point of the movie.
this film benefits a lot from being in its time. It bears the hallmarks of a 70s movie. Like all of the filmmaking like screams 1970s filmmaking style.
God, those transitions. The goddamn transitions.
like
when they do
the-
a diagonal wipe, I lost my shit. Because you don't see that. Like, ever. Yeah, it's stock standard in, like, iMovie, but no one ever uses it. But it's in a Best Picture winner.
Yes. I will drop in. There is some really fun trivia with this, and as we get to certain people or scenes or whatever, I'll drop it in. But in terms of this being like a comedy and a drama, I do have a thing here. Paul Newman had been advised by his agent or people in the industry to avoid doing comedy films because he didn't really, apparently they didn't feel he had the light touch to do comedy films. And part of the reason he wanted to play Henry Gondorf was to prove that he could do comedy as well as drama. So just an interesting thing from a Newman standpoint that maybe he signed on to do comedy, but maybe he is bringing that dramatic gravitas to this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I mean, we haven't really talked about the characters very much, but Paul Newman and Robert Redford, I think, are very, very good together. I think the film doesn't let us have that as much as it should. Like Paul, they have like great charisma as this like duo when they first meet. That's a great scene when like in the shower where he's like, "Can I turn it off?" And he's like, "No, don't. I'm not turning the shower off until you're sober." And moments like that continue throughout the film. But I do agree that whatever his name, it totally just escaped my mind. That Paul Newman is very good as kind of like a straight man. I feel like he is a less comedic character than Robert Redford is, but I don't know. They bounce off each other because I feel like this film's comedy is not very overt. It's not a very overtly funny movie, but I think when you bring up elements of the situations that it puts itself in, you're right, Tanner, like with the Western Union office and the painters, like that is funny. It just isn't like I don't know, it's not a punchline kind of joke.
Yeah. If we want to talk about, Newman, I think being a great like comedic bit from him, I gotta go to the poker scene when he's playing poker with Lonigan, and he's coming in and he's like sneezing and he's burping and he's pretending to be drunk and stuff like that. And
He just like me, for real.
He continually gets Lonigan's name wrong every time he uses Linneman, whatever. I think he's great in that. He's but he's also he's playing a character who's putting this on while also trying to win a poker game that he knows this guy is cheating at. So he's trying to out-cheat this guy while also like pretending to be a drunk off his ass like horse gambling ringleader.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like the situations just kind of build from there. That's like the first con of the movie. It's in like the first 30 minutes is when we get on the train and they have to gamble, which I love that scene because they're on the train. And the train conductor is like the dealer. That was awesome.
Yeah. I do have a little bit of trivia when I think Abram alluded to Paul Newman doing some card tricks earlier. And lo and behold, that was in fact not actually Paul Newman doing those crazy card tricks and stuff like that. Sad stuff, I know. It is actually technical advisor John Scarn. He did all the car manipulation and deck switching in the film. It would have taken a long time for someone like Paul Newman to master all the car routines in the film. In the sequence where he's actually doing the card tricks, Scarn's hands disappear off screen. I think probably about when he like messes up that one. That the hands sort of pull away and they do an invisible cut and then it pans up to Paul Newman. So very well hidden there. I was pretty convinced that it was Paul Newman.
I didn't notice. Yeah, I was like, whoa.
Yeah.
Oh, they panned up. Paul Newman's got the fingers of,
Paul Newman must have done this.
They conned us.
They did con us in many ways.
Yeah, so I got completely thrown off because I just announced Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Then I was on Twitter and I just got pinged about it. So
Oh boy.
It was
Twitter
Star Wars
during
time.
Twitter user during Quest.
For Star Wars.
Abram, do you like
counts.
Star Wars? I didn't know that actually.
But so here's what I'm gonna do because I basically haven't been
we have to talk
listening.
about it.
I basically haven't been listening for the last 2 minutes, so I'm just gonna come up with something else to say instead.
Way
Because
more
here's
than
what
2
I'm
minutes, just let you know.
Here's what I want to talk about.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
The train sequence to me is emblematic of why I think the plot is so fun because it's kind of why crime movies in general are fun because you can kind of suspend your disbelief and think, man, Tucker, mind your business.
That's what I'm thinking during crime movies.
The entire heist is predicated upon what's this guy's weakness? He's a prideful fool, and how are we gonna exploit this? Well, we're gonna exploit it by playing poker with him to make him mad, and then set up an entire fake horse gambling entire parlor to trick him to give us his money, and then we're going to make sure we keep his money by setting up a fake FBI to tip off a police officer.
Yeah.
What's great about this movie is on the plot level, it intersects the motivations of the characters and their desires with just the overall idea of the heist. So it's not just here's characters thrown into a generic heist. It's how can these characters motivate an interesting heist. And they do. We got the old guy who's reading off all like looking through all this information. Like, okay, which horse can we pull for this one? And the woman's there too, and they're communicating, and you can like see them peeking through the slats of the curtains when Robert Shaw comes in to put in his bet. Right? It's just so clever, and it's to me it speaks to like an imagination to the crime film, to the heist movie that you don't often see.
Yeah.
Because sure, this could happen, but we're even several more steps removed from like this making sense in an Ocean's 11. But that's compelling because as a viewer, it really engages me because I'm right there I'm basically being conned too. Like, how are they going to possibly pull this off? And they're speaking to the point about the sleight of hand so good on a technical level, you don't see Paul Newman as being unable to do these tricks. They really pull some good double blinds on the audience too. The FBI component is the one that I think about.
Yeah.
Pretty squarely because we learn, and I really love Robert Redford's character. He's so dedicated to pulling off this heist that he's basically lying to Paul Newman. No, I'm not being chased by the cops. No, I'm not being chased by Lonigan's guys. And both are true, right? Those are both happening. So like, shit, we got to get this cop off of this kid's back. So there's just a throwaway line about that. We got to do something about him. So I'm sitting there as an audience member thinking, okay, we got to do something about the policeman. So
Named
Snyder. Yes.
And then Snyder gets picked up by the FBI guys, and I think, okay, this is the long con being put on by Paul Newman. But then we get into that FBI building and it looks shitty. So I'm like, okay, yeah, this is complete nonsense. But then we don't see an FBI officer that we recognize as being part of the crew. So then I think, damn, this is really the FBI. And then all of a sudden, Robert Redford is pulled into it, and so they're tricking the audience and the characters. And I think it takes a real talented pen to pull that off on all those different levels.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's the payoff of those that makes all of that worth it. I'm watching this sequence where Snyder gets pulled in by the FBI, and he's like, you gotta work with us. We're trying to do it. Like they talk about the fact that I can't remember what they're gonna do to Hooker, but they're gonna do something to him if he doesn't play along with their plan and reveal everything, or they're gonna kill Luther's wife or send Luther's wife to jail. And he's like, in Robert Redford's acting, he's like, shit, no, I don't want this to happen. And so I'm right along with Hooker in this moment. But when you eventually get that reveal, I think it makes all those sequences a lot more compelling and meaningful. Because I'm watching this sequence. I'm like, yeah, this is the FBI. They're pulling along. This kind of sucks, but It sucks for him.
Yeah.
But excuse me.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem that special. But then it becomes very special when you learn in retrospect that no, this is like a third tier of this crew that we never saw that is acting as the FBI, and they're triple, quadruple pranking the other guys into the shootout that's actually fake, and then he's gone. It's like, holy crap. It's so intertwined that I think it supports itself in a really sort of twisted way.
Yeah. Abram, you brought up something earlier, and I kind of want to talk about Lonigan a little bit as the antagonist of this film, because you're right, they really do like analysis of him, like psychoanalysis of him to figure out how to get to him and in what specific ways. I think one of my favorite instances of that is not only with the whole poker thing of playing against his ego and stuff like that, but when Robert Redford pretends to be, I forget what the fake name he uses is, but he basically pretends to be like this right-hand man of Paul Newman's fake horse gambling ringleader guy. And he's like, I want to take over this guy's operation, and I want you to help me, Lonigan. And Lonigan's like, I don't know. It seems like a lot of effort to go through, even though he really does want to because he's just pissed at Paul Newman's character. And so Robert Redford feeds him this sort of sob story backstory that is just directly Lonigan's own life, that he comes from this area called 5 Points, and that, you know, he wants to fight his way to the top, and Lonigan's like, all right, I can get behind this guy because he's just him. He's just using his own backstory again.
He's just like him for real, yeah.
He's just like him for real. And I love that that plays into like a usefulness of, I think the character's name is JJ, is the guy who like does all the background research and like tells him about all these things. I just love that they're finding these little ways, pulling out the Jenga blocks of Lonigan's overbearing crime boss character.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and the way that in those, when Robert Redford, or I guess when Hooker and Lanigan are like meeting and like seemingly working together, or Hooker is like trying to work for Lanigan, I find it very convincing. Like the film plays it like one too many times, for not in like a bad way, but like one too many times for it to be convincing that Hooker is double crossing his real boss. And so like I found myself questioning. I was like, oh, he really is. Oh, I was like, oh shit, something. But then I'm like, oh, but he's doing his part of the game now. He's like, who's double crossing who and who's on what side? I like that confusion when. And I think that the confusion works really well in this film because it's set up in a way that, like, if you want to be confused, I think you can totally let yourself be confused. And if you want to, like, know who's on what side at all times, you can read into that and really figure it out. And I just let myself be confused until it told me whose side everyone was on, because that's how I like to watch movies. And it was great. I loved it. I was like, oh, crap, Hooker's on the wrong side now. He's working against us. Not quite.
See,
You did an to yourself.
Indeed.
but there's another layer of excellence over that last act, because I think that it's a movie that ratchets, and the plot gets more compelling, and as a result, the entire film gets more compelling as you get towards its conclusion. and that is the fact that, which we haven't explicitly mentioned, Lonigan's guys are trying to kill
Hooker. Yeah.
Because Hooker is one of the grifters from the beginning of the film who stole Lonigan's money in the first place. So there's this great moment where Hooker is going back to his apartment, and two guys start shooting at him. Mm-hmm. And he's running for his life. And what makes it so compelling is he's not only running for his life to not get shot and killed, but he can't let his face be seen, because as soon as these guys know who he is and reports back to Lonigan, the whole thing's a bust. At the same time, there's this person with a silenced pistol going around shooting people.
Celino. Who is Celino?
Yeah, and like the movie is really great about misdirects that feel organic. I think that there's a real tendency when you've got a twist or a misdirect in a film to just let it happen and not properly weave in the sort of the multifaceted nature of it to where these things feel cheap. But everything here feels very earned to me, because I, as an audience member, I'm trying to piece these things together too. And when it clicks, I can think back to the events of what's just unfolded, and it makes sense in my head.
Exactly. That's what I was saying earlier with the subversion. Yeah.
Yeah. When Robert Redford is shot and the blood's coming out of his mouth, I'm like, damn, the FBI totally screwed this whole thing up. And then then I'm like, oh, but wait, how did they pull off that con at the beginning of the film? Fake blood. That wasn't a real knife injury. I'm like, oh, hold on a second. Hold on a second. And then we got Paul Newman getting up, and the movie folds back in on itself in a really nice way.
Yes.
Yeah.
I do have some more trivia here. I want to drop this stuff in because we've talked about both Robert Redford and Paul Newman, and I have some things that pertain to the both of them.
Okay.
I've been drawing some Departed sort of similarities in this movie. Jack Nicholson actually turned down the role of Johnny Hooker, which allowed Robert Redford to get the role.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Huh. I'm not sure how. I mean, I'm sure it would have been great, but I really think that Robert Redford's kind of like fresh-facedness gives him an appeal here that I'm a fan of Robert Redford, but I think this might be one of my favorite roles of his because seeing him so young and in some ways naive, but in some ways experienced through the character and also the actor playing the character, like there's a combination there that makes it uniquely compelling for this guy that's had this really long career. And you guys remember the last time we saw Robert Redford? Out of
Man with a
Africa.
Gun?
Oh, you're right.
Out of Africa. That was the last best picture winner we saw him in.
That was like
and
years ago.
wow. This
Yeah.
is so much more interesting.
Yes. Robert Redford. We're not going to pay attention to whatever comment you made, Abram. I'm going to keep steaming ahead. Robert Redford actually didn't see this movie until June 2004.
Why?
Explain.
I don't know. It didn't
Tanner?
say.
Okay.
But did he just wander into a theater that was showing it and he's like, oh, I'm in this?
Oh, yeah.
I
it wasn't
remember
like
that
on
one.
It wasn't like on an anniversary of it or anything. I don't know. Maybe he just wanted to pop it on one night with the missus.
I can
sorry, go ahead, Timo.
excuse like not seeing movies that you work on if you're like part of the crew. Like I don't ever see any of the movies I work on, but like being the main actor. Okay.
Whatever, man.
And they had to deal with a few main actor injuries while they were working on this film. Starting with Robert Redford, he had broken his thumb in a skiing accident before filming started. So I wanted to know if any of you guys caught any of these weird things. Numerous times in the film, he uses his right hand. He'd broken his right thumb. He uses his right hand oddly to avoid using the thumb, such as holding a fork with 4 fingers but not his thumb.
Yeah, I saw that.
I didn't notice that.
No.
What else did he do? Because I noticed that too.
Oh, okay. Sounds good. And then I think you guys probably did notice this. Robert Shaw, who played Lonigan, has a limp throughout the entire film. I'm sure that we all noticed that. It's very evident. Mm-hmm. But that's because he had apparently split all of the ligaments in his knee when he was slipping on a wet handball while playing in Beverly Hills. He had to
Now,
wait.
who's watering the Beverly Hills handballs is what I want to know.
Who is sabotaging Robert Shaw's handballs? I want to know. We need to get to the bottom of this.
Who's
he had to-
watering that man's balls?
Yeah, Abram.
Do you have any more like physical points here? Because I actually want to segue into some of the physical chase scenes.
Well, I was just gonna say that he had to wear a leg brace, but that was easily hideable under their big puffy 1930s gangster pants.
Which they
They're
stuffed
Gangster
many
Pants?
things
Great
into.
band name.
Yeah, gangster pants.
I love that montage when we're classing up Robert Redford and they're like trying to measure him for the pants. Like, what the fuck are you doing? Trying to do his nails and everything. That's a fun sequence. But what I want to talk about and what the trivia made me think of is that really great chase sequence when Snyder is going after Hooker and it's to that piano music
Yes.
It starts with, I love that scene. First of all, we're on the payphone. Boom. Gun thrust through the glass.
Oh, that's such a great
Smash
moment.
the arm in the door. It's so kinetic. Like, this is a movie that I think it's so witty and it succeeds because the script is so well written and it's slow paced and it's this carefully orchestrated, long con. I think they call it the big con. But it knows when to break that tension with just really kinetic sequences. And watching Robert Redford run for his life, and then I love seeing him go up on a train platform and then jump the railing, jump on top, and Snyder's like pointing with the gun, like looking on the roof, and then he jumps, and Snyder's like shaking his fist in like classic bad guy fashion. Ooh, they got away. It's just really fun. I think it lends to that sort of spirited nature of the film, Tucker, you were talking about earlier.
Yeah,
I love the. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Tucker.
Thank you. That's so kind of you. I think the energy of those chase sequences, and combined with the ragtime music that I was talking about, that I want to really sing my praises for in a little bit, is why I feel this movie is lighthearted. Like, yeah, he's running for his life, but it feels like a Tom and Jerry episode. Like, it feels like they're shaking the hand in the hair, ragtime music, jumping off the trains, like, this is ridiculous. This is crazy. And it always feels fun and fresh. And I think that's the energy you're talking about.
Yeah. I was just gonna shout out one of my favorite moments is when he almost gets killed by Lonigan's guys that are hiding in his apartment, and he gets away by like hiding, like crouching down on the side of like a street cleaning, like a tiny little street cleaner thing. So fun. But Tucker, I'll rattle off the wins and noms, which will give you an opportunity to talk about that score. But first, this film did of course win Best Picture. It was the first Universal Pictures Best Picture win since All Quiet on the Western Front. Wow. 33 years earlier. Yeah. George Roy Hill won Best Director. This won Best Original Screenplay, Best Set Direction, Best Costume Design, Best Film Editing, and Best Original Score. It was nominated for Robert Redford in a leading role, Best Cinematography, and Best Sound. So yes, it did win Best Score.
Yeah, and I think deservedly so. I think this is the element that sticks out the most for me. I mean, the ragtime score that is set to this, opening and closing on The Entertainer, but using The Entertainer-styled ragtime music across the film, gives this film a very unique energy. And I was always just pleasantly surprised when a con scene starts up and we start hearing ragtime music. And I'm like, this is great. I can turn it on. I'm like, I love this. Like, it is that music that I think allows it to be endeared more to me than your average crime film, because it does feel unique. I can't name another film that came out after the 1930s that has a ragtime score, period, but especially not one that is technically about this serious of things, revenge, crime, whatever. As we're saying, it is lighthearted, but I think a lot of that comes from the fact that it's got a very unique score that I have searched through and added to my YouTube music playlist, and I will be listening to this quite a bit.
I can't wait to hear it around the house when in the coming weeks and months, I'm sure.
I'm not really sure I agree with you, Tucker. I think the score is kind of goofy ass. It's kind of a goofy score, and so
how dare you, frankly, Timo.
In some ways, like,
it's so serious.
And I'm like, I know that it I feel like it fits in that kind of. It like tonally it fits sort of, but I feel like the film otherwise, like the comedic elements of the film are sort of supported and created by the score rather than like the score like the other way around, which is kind of how I would want it. And so I The Entertainer, it's like almost, I don't know, the ragtime score like doesn't really work for me. I feel like you could take those similar elements and that similar feel and maybe like expand upon it a little more. And yeah, I don't know. It's goofy. It's like a little too goofy for me in the middle of the movie when I'm like it's like kind of serious, and so I feel like we could have like a kind of serious score. There's a couple scenes in which like I feel like the score is like really mismatched to what is going on, and I didn't particularly like that. But I know, I mean, not like a huge mark against the film because the score it really isn't in there that much. There's like, I don't know, 5-6 pieces throughout the whole film, something like that. It doesn't feel very like score heavy. It's not a film that is got a bed of music underneath the entire thing.
Yeah. I don't even remember the score, to be honest. I remember the one piano bit, but like, okay, yeah, it's there. I think it contributes to a tone. Whether it goes too far in that mission, as Timo was saying, I don't know. I think that the film's ability to weave between these kind of various tonal extremes is to its benefit. So I don't think I viewed it as a problem. But also, I don't hear 95% of scores in movies. Yeah, I just forget.
You'd rather Black Bear did the score for this thing.
I would.
Holy
I'm out
moly.
here chipping Scott Joplin, and you're like, nah.
I do have a collection of little bits, and then a very interesting on-set story. So what would we like to go with?
I want to hear this on-set story.
Which one of them is gonna do something bad that we're gonna be like, ee?
Well, yeah, Abram, go ahead.
Now, all I would like to say is maybe this is a good opportunity as Tanner tells a story that we all pull up the spreadsheet just so we have it ready.
Okay. All right. So, according to Paul Newman, one afternoon of friendly drinks, it triggered a series of competitive practical jokes between himself and George Roy Hill, the director.
Okay.
And maybe in the 1970s, practical jokes had a different connotation. I think nowadays, how this story ends would be closer to major vandalization, perhaps. George Roy Hill invited Newman out to his office to drink one afternoon. Just before, Hill told Newman that he had no beer or vodka and asked him to pick up some drinks and bring it over. Newman agreed. Newman then sent him. They had their drinks, and he sent him a bill for $8, the cost of what the drinks cost.
Venmo'd him.
Yeah, he Venmo requested him. George Roy Hill denied his Venmo request, as it were, in the 1970s. He said he responded. He actually responded by sending him a 3-page letter about the nature of friendship and how Newman had abused it. Newman then responded.
Send him a coffee pasta.
Let me know if you guys think this is a bit of an escalation. So Newman gets a 3-page letter, and Newman's like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to cut George Roy Hill's desk in half with a chainsaw and leave a note that says, "This isn't about friendship. It's about $8. I may detonate the entire bungalow next time, so don't mess around." Later, Newman received a bill from Universal Studios for $800 to pay for the damage to the desk. Newman never paid.
Oh, Christ.
Yeah.
God, I bet there's some ragtime music playing over that scene.
I'm sure there was.
That would be fitting for ragtime music.
Just the jump from getting a 3-page, probably a joke 3-page letter, by the way. Like, this guy just didn't want to pay him $8 or whatever. He's like, I'm gonna cut this guy's desk in half with a chainsaw. Actually,
that's like an American Psycho set piece.
Yeah.
Now that's a movie that needs ragtime music.
There you go. Yeah. Well.
Excellent.
Shall we, folks?
Excellent story, Tanner, and I think we shall. As not quite on set, but in the nebulous cloud around set.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, I've got my number pulled up, the spreadsheet pulled up, and my number punched in.
As do I.
I do too.
All will be revealed in 3, 2, 1.
Beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop. Calculating. Wowie zowie. Look at this.
We have a score. It is 8.6, and the point breakdown, top to bottom, goes Abram gave it a 9, as he pretty strongly hinted towards at the beginning. Tanner follows up with an 8.8, and then Tucker and I, at the bottom of your frame and the bottom of the point breakdown, gave it an 8.2, both. So 8.6 is...
We got a big tie.
Yeah, we do.
8.6 is a big tie area.
It's only one film, but this is a big tie.
It's a tough
problem.
decision. Yeah, that is the
It's
issue.
an easy decision, but it's a big tie.
I see.
Oh, man. Okay, well, we can't keep our listeners in suspense anymore. The film that this is tied with for the 8.6 spot is Rocky. So The Sting v. Rocky. What do you guys think? I have a thought, maybe, but it's kind of like a gut immediate reaction. So perhaps
other people
Then
someone...
go
might as well
first.
go with it. Spit it out.
Yeah.
I mean, I want Rocky to go above. I think Rocky's a better film, and I like Rocky more, and it's more memorable. This film did have a couple elements where I was a little snoozy in the middle of it. And I feel like the staying power of Rocky in our cultural zeitgeist and all those elements gives it the boost that the deserved boost to go above the Sting.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, but I do want to clarify by saying I have certainly raised my thoughts on this film. If we had not talked about it so positively over the course of this episode, my score would have been lower, and that would have knocked it down at least 0.1 points. It would have been tied. But talking about how intricately the plot is woven and how masterfully it balances its complexity has given me a newfound appreciation for it. But I also think that Rocky has the energy that I found with this film, but with much stronger characters, much more memorable situations and sequences of like overt acting from Sylvester Stallone that absolutely put it above. And alongside its iconic status
And a better score.
There's real no classic. What you
The
really
Rocky score.
fussed me up for that. I don't even know what I'm saying at this point. There's no contest for me. I think that Rocky easily goes above.
Abram, you go first.
2 votes for Rocky right now.
The Sting, easily. For me, it's not close in the other direction.
God damn it. You
I-
fucking did this to me.
I love how complicated the narrative is here. I think Rocky's a lot of fun. I think these films are both similar in that sense that these just feel like mass appeal, really enjoyable films. But I think that the complexity of this shows a real mastery that a lot of films don't have. This really does stand as one of the best written crime films, in my opinion. And I love that. And I think that, Sylvester Stallone is good and he gives a very interesting performance. But you've got Robert Redford, you've got Paul Newman, you've got Robert Shaw in this film. And that just brings a level of charisma and talent to a film of such an incredible writing caliber that weaves between these themes and tones so well that this feels so distinct and lovely. I think this movie is truly excellent, and I think it deserves to go above Rocky.
I have something. I'm gonna throw a little bit. Tanner, I don't know if this matters, but to me, The Sting, fun and enjoyable. Rocky, fun and enjoyable. But in Rocky, I felt Rocky made me feel some type of way, and I feel like the emotional core of Rocky is a little stronger than The Sting. The Sting's not a very emotional film. There's not a lot of like inner anguish and inner character struggle and development alongside our externalized plot development and struggle. So just a little food for thought there.
I do have The Sting scored higher than Rocky. But my brain says The Sting. My it's pulsating with the plot intricacies of The Sting. But my recency bias also says The Sting. But my heart says Rocky. I'm gonna go Rocky. I think that it's fitting that both these films are tied at the same score because they are so close. But I think I think I gotta go Rocky for the iconic status that Rocky has. I think if I'm gonna go into a movie for a performance, I think I'm gonna go into it for Sylvester Stallone as Rocky. With that real life underdog story that is coupled with the underdog story of Rocky Balboa in the film, and I think that the Sting has the plot intricacy, the interesting, twists and turns. But I think Rocky can match it in a different realm of, emotional weight and, building up this down in the dumps character to, the iconic status that is Rocky Balboa. So I'm going to go Rocky.
Good boy. Good boy.
And
I'll have to give you a belly rub after this.
Okay, I look forward to it.
There you have it. At 8.6, this film, The Sting, is going to go at the 23rd spot on our list. If you were wondering, we know that Rocky is now below, wait.
Above.
Yes.
No, I'm sorry, I gave it the wrong number. It actually goes at the 24th spot, because Rocky is now above The Sting, and Nomadland is below it. Interesting how that sorts out.
Sure.
Very interesting.
It is. Take on that how you will. Should we figure out what we're doing next week?
I think we should. I think that we should. It's unconventional, but I think we should figure out what movie we're going to watch next.
Okay. Well, Tanner, can you do it in a gangster accent? Can you do the spin?
Yeah. I need. Can we put the entertainer over this?
Sure, yeah. Why not?
Okay. All right. It's not going to match up tempo-wise at all, but I'll do a little gangster voice. Why not? Yeah, Wheel, what's your deal? Give us a movie that makes us squeal. Is it on digital? Is it on reel? Wheel, what's your deal?
And the Wheel's deal is number 16. Number 16 coming up the round straight. We should have done it in like the horse racing.
That's also good.
The second, I had like 45 seconds too late on that thought.
It's number 16 crossing the finish line, and number 16 is...
The film from 1954, directed by Elie Kazan, starring Marlon Brando. We'll be watching On the Waterfront.
On the waterfront, okay.
On the waterfront. Howdy doody.
Howdy doody.
We're not really doing a gangster voice there. That's more of like a radio announcer voice.
Yeah, it's
like
transatlantic, But have you guys seen On the Waterfront before?
I have.
Twice.
I have as well.
I don't remember a goddamn lick about it, though.
I've seen this film before. Timo, Abram?
No, I have not.
Okay.
We're back in the hands of Elie Kazan. Does anyone remember what other Best Picture winner he directed?
Me.
Tanner.
Gentleman's Agreement.
Gentleman's Agreement.
Gentleman's Agreement.
Gentleman's Agreement.
There we go, boys. We did it. Look how smart we are.
Wow.
We're so smart.
Okay, I'm looking forward to this. I want to hear what you guys think about On the Waterfront. And I took a class about this film, or not about this film. We talked about this film in class, and I didn't rewatch it because I was way too busy because I'd already seen it also. And so I'm looking forward to taking that context and applying it to this new rewatch and thinking about what the film has to say more, because I think I will get more out of it on this second, third, who knows, on this further rewatch.
Can
On this viewing.
On the Waterfront be a contender? Can it be somebody on our great ranking of all of the Best Picture winners?
That is the question. We will have to figure that out next week. Thank you for joining me and talking about The Sting. None of us were stung by this film. We all thought it was pretty fun. So
Yeah.
until...
We were all stung in our hearts.
It's true. It's swollen.
Boom, 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 boom. We'll catch you then next week to talk about Elia Kazan's On the Waterfront. Until then, peace.
That's fair enough.
What are you tiddling with over there?
He's playing Ape Escape.
What?
Tanner, where the fuck did you pull Ape Escape out of?
I don't know.
Also, this actually gives me. It's really bugging me that I'm wearing the same shirt that I have in the
Yeah.
poster, so I'm putting on a different shirt.
Abram, you don't want to know where I'm pulling Ape Escape out of.
He can't hear you.
Maybe we'll do shirt. Let's do a shirtless episode of Quest for the Bestest.
Abram, you don't want to know where I'm pulling Ape Escape out of.
Shut the fuck up, Tanner.